What if the man everyone ignored turned out to be the one who built a legacy they could never match? Today's story will open your eyes. Before we dive in, tell us, where are you watching from? If you love real, heartwarming stories about respect, redemption, and second chances, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and follow. We bring you inspiring journeys every single day. Now, let's step into the unforgettable day that changed Evergreen Motors forever. That morning, the sky over Willow Creek stretched out in a pale blue hue, with soft sunlight brushing against the town's old streets. Inside the main lobby of Evergreen Motors, where the glossy floor mirrored the fluorescent lights above, the atmosphere buzzed with its usual rush. Leonard Leo Brooks, 75 years old, stepped inside. He wore a faded but clean flannel shirt, worn jeans, and a pair of leather boots polished to a careful shine. On his sun-weathered face, his eyes still carried the patience and calm of a man who had once weathered storms of bullets in distant battlefields. He chose a quiet spot near the coffee machine, placed his worn baseball cap on his lap, and silently waited. But in this polished world, he was nearly invisible. 5 young sales associates, dressed in sharp suits and gleaming shoes, chatted animatedly near the front counter. Not a single glance was cast toward Leo, not a single greeting offered. They streamed past him like water gliding over an old, forgotten stone in the bed of a creek. After a while, Madison Hale, the young receptionist with gleaming nails and meticulously styled hair, finally noticed Leo. She walked over, her eyes cool, as if she were looking at something out of place. "Sir, this area is reserved for actual customers," Madison said, her voice a syrupy blend of sweetness and steel. Leo looked up, his kind eyes unable to hide a weariness long carried. "I'm here to buy a car," he replied, his voice low and steady, his calloused hands gently clasped together. Madison's gaze swept him from head to toe. The simple clothes, the rough hands, the age, and she shrugged, making no effort to hide her judgment. "Someone might help you, if they have time," she said curtly, turning away and leaving him there like some forgotten relic no one wanted. Leo merely smiled faintly, accustomed to being overlooked. Just like in the old days, in the jungles of Vietnam, he had once waited too, waited for signals, for rescue, for something larger than himself. And so he sat there, silently blending into the background, as the wall clocks ticked out each slow second, marking the passage of time in a room full of rushing strangers. 40 minutes passed. Inside Evergreen Motors, the neon lights still cast their glow across the gleaming floor, long shadows trailing behind the hurried steps of customers and staff. But Leonard Leo Brooks remained, alone and unmoving, as if he were becoming part of the cold tiles beneath him. The salespeople were all busy, glued to their phones, or tending to customers who seemed more promising. A middle-aged man in a light blue suit strolled by, glancing at Leo as if he were an old, unwanted piece of furniture, before quickly turning away. A young woman adjusted her hair in the mirror, completely ignoring the hopeful glance from the elderly man sitting quietly by the coffee counter. The slow, steady ticking of the wall clock seemed to slice deeper into Leo's patience with every passing second. Still, he sat there, back straight, his calloused hands interlaced, eyes fixed beyond the glass doors to the sun-drenched parking lot outside. A soldier, forgotten perhaps, but still holding his posture with quiet dignity. Madison Hale, the receptionist in a tight dress and clunky high heels, finally decided to approach, her gaze sweeping over Leo with obvious impatience. "Maybe you didn't hear me earlier," she said, her voice coated in a brittle layer of politeness. "This area is reserved for real customers, sir." Leo looked up, his pale gray eyes flickering briefly, not with anger, but with something quieter, heavier. "I'm a customer," he replied calmly. "I'm looking to buy a car." Madison folded her arms across her chest, sizing him up again with a frosty stare. "Really?" She arched an eyebrow. "We typically don't cater to folks just looking for a shady spot out of the sun, sir." Across the room, a few salespeople snickered, deliberately averting their eyes. One of them, Bryce Dalton, the sales manager, even muttered under his breath, loud enough for a few others to hear. Maybe the old man thinks this is a mobile retirement home. Leo only smiled. No anger. No protest. He had heard far worse, long ago, in places where a man's worth wasn't measured by the shoes he wore or the label stitched onto his shirt. In the breast pocket of his faded flannel shirt, a worn photo of his old unit still rested, a silent witness to a time when he had meant everything to his comrades. A lifeline in a war zone, a heartbeat that carried others forward. But here, on this sunny morning in Willow Creek, he was merely an old man looking for shelter. Leo nodded slightly, as if reminding himself, "It's all right. I've waded through worse." He tightened his grip on the brim of his cap, his eyes steady, even as something inside him quietly sagged. What Leo didn't know was that, in just a few short minutes, this small, polished world would be turned upside down, and those who had once dismissed him would soon learn a lesson they would never forget. Beyond a reception counter, through the frosted glass, the sales office buzzed louder, like a hive ready to burst open. Bryce Dalton, Mason Clark, and Connor Hayes, the dealership's top salesmen, were huddled around the main table, coffee cups in hand, stealing glances at Leo Brooks. "See that old guy?" Mason muttered, barely suppressing a laugh. "I bet he's just here for the free air conditioning." Connor smirked. "Air conditioning? Please. He's probably scouting for a shelter. With those clothes, he looks like he walked straight out of the 1970s. Bryce narrowed his eyes, wearing a smug grin. "Wanna bet? I'm calling it now. He probably doesn't even have a valid driver's license." The three men chuckled under their breath, the sound sharp and careless. They didn't even bother hiding it, deliberately letting Madison overhear as she carried a tray of coffee past them. Madison merely shrugged, offering a half-smirk before flipping her hair casually. "We're not a charity, are we?" Across the room, Logan Reeves, the youngest salesman at just 23 years old, sat upright at his desk. He remained silent, but his hand tightened unconsciously around the pen he was holding. Logan glanced through the glass window, seeing Leo Brooks still sitting alone, head bowed slightly, absent-mindedly fiddling with an old, worn notebook. A wave of discomfort welled up in Logan's chest, the same suffocating feeling he used to get as a kid whenever he saw someone being bullied and didn't have the courage to step in. Clearing his throat, Logan steadied his voice and spoke up. Maybe he actually wants to buy a car. The three older salesmen turned to look at him, first surprised, then quickly sneering. Bryce let out a booming laugh. "You're too green, Reeves. This is a dealership, not a charity for aging veterans." Mason clapped Logan on the back, his tone dripping with mockery. "Tell you what, kid, if you're feeling generous, maybe you can go offer him a toy car." Connor smirked. "Or better yet, ask him for a credit card up front." "Oh wait, he probably carries cash, folded up in a handkerchief." Another round of laughter erupted. Logan pressed his lips together, feeling the heat rising in his face. But he didn't fire back. Instead, his gaze drifted quietly back to the window, back to the old man who still sat there, quietly enduring, unseen. Leo Brooks still sat there, hunched over his worn notebook, as if the noisy world bustling around him had nothing to do with him. For a fleeting moment, Logan caught Leo's gaze. A fleeting, sorrowful look, but also one of unwavering resolve. A look Logan would remember for the rest of his life. The jingle of the door chime shattered the buzz inside the showroom. Everyone, Madison, Bryce, Mason, and Connor, instinctively looked up and immediately straightened their backs, faces draining of color. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit entered, his rugged features bearing the unmistakable mark of a military man. He moved with the crisp, decisive gait of someone who still carried the rhythm of the parade ground in his bones. A small brass nameplate on his chest gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Nathan Briggs. A few employees muttered under their breath. "Isn't that Colonel Nathan Briggs?" Briggs? The telecom mogul? The guy with all those federal contracts? The air in the room shifted instantly, like soldiers snapping to attention when a general walks into camp. Nathan Briggs marched straight into the center of the showroom. his sharp eyes sweeping the space. In just a few seconds, his gaze landed, not on the gleaming SUVs, not on the breathless sales team, but on the old man sitting quietly by the coffee machine. Leo Brooks. With a voice that rang out like a bell across the room, Nathan called, "Sergeant Leo Brooks." Each syllable cracked through the tension like thunder on a clear day. The entire dealership froze. Leo lifted his head, momentarily stunned, before a slow, knowing smile broke across his face. He rose to his feet, moving with a quiet dignity, his posture still bearing the unmistakable steel of a man who had once worn the uniform proudly. Nathan strode forward, arms wide, and embraced Leo tightly, right there, under the stunned gaze of the entire showroom. "You're the man who saved my life," Nathan said loudly, his voice carrying through the air like a declaration. "If it weren't for you that day in Key San, I wouldn't be standing here." Whispers rippled across the room like wildfire. Saved his life? That old man was a soldier? Good Lord. An unexpected detail Nathan added sent another shockwave through the showroom. "And thanks to him," Nathan declared, "I had the chance to build Briggs Tech, a company that now employs over 6,000 people. Every one of them owes their livelihood to this man." Behind a reception desk, Madison dropped her coffee cup, shattering it on the floor. Bryce, Mason, and Connor turned as white as chalk. Logan, the only one who had earlier felt a twinge of guilt, stood frozen, but now there was a flicker of admiration and pride in his eyes. No one dared say a word. In the suffocating silence, Leo simply offered a faint smile and bowed slightly toward Nathan in the proper military salute, even though they were now of similar age. The air in the room felt frozen in place. Nathan Briggs released Leo from the embrace and turned to face the stunned employees of Evergreen Motors. His voice dropped lower, making it all the more dangerous, each word striking the tense room like a nail driven into solid wood. "I've seen enough." His steely gaze swept from Bryce to Mason, to Connor, and finally to Madison. Those who had, just minutes earlier, laughed smugly behind the glass, now frozen like statues. "For 40 minutes, Nathan said, a hero, a man who once defended this country, was treated by you as if he were invisible." He turned and pointed directly at the reception desk, where Madison still stood, fumbling for words. "Your receptionist outright tried to drive him away from the customer area, simply because his clothes didn't fit your idea of luxury." Nathan slowly began pacing the room, the way a general inspects a crumbling battalion. "Not one of you asked what he needed. Not one of you offered him a glass of water. Instead, you laughed. You mocked his age, his appearance." There was a faint rustling sound as a few employees instinctively took small steps backward. Logan remained rooted in place, gripping the piece of paper in his hand so tightly it crumpled. His face flushed red. He knew he had failed, not because of his actions, but because he hadn't had the courage to step forward sooner. Nathan stopped in front of Bryce's desk. Bryce, who was now forcing a strained, artificial smile. Nathan pointed a firm finger straight at his chest. "You guessed wrong this time, boy." Bryce opened his mouth to protest, but Nathan raised his hand sharply to silence him. "You may wear fine suits and flash expensive phones, but the truth is, you're poor. Poor in respect. Poor in heart." Every word he released struck like a hammer against their dignity. "And that, ladies and gentlemen," Nathan said loudly, turning to address everyone, "is exactly why Evergreen Motors must change. Right here, right now." A sharp click echoed from the glass door. Everyone turned and saw two men in dark suits walk in, each carrying a black leather briefcase. Pinned to their jackets was the unmistakable logo of Briggs Tech Holdings. A cold chill ran down Madison's spine. Bryce looked as if his knees were about to buckle. Nathan calmly announced, his voice like steel, "As of this morning, I finalized the acquisition of 75% of Evergreen Motors shares. I am now the acting owner." A wave of murmuring rose, then fell silent when Nathan raised his hand. "Every employee here will be required to complete a new training program. Respect without prejudice. If you don't like it," he pointed directly toward the sunlit exit, where the concrete shimmered under the midday heat. The door's right there. He paused, his gaze sharp enough to slice through stone. For those who stay, Nathan continued, voice steely. Remember this. From this moment on, every customer, no matter how they're dressed, no matter their age or wealth, deserves to be treated with dignity. No one moved. No one dared to utter a word. In the corner, Leo Brooks remained standing, his weathered eyes calm. Yet deep within them, a quiet pride stirred. Judgment Day had arrived. The silence stretched on endlessly across the showroom after Nathan Briggs' declaration. Some employees exchanged bewildered glances, as if hoping this was just some cruel prank. But when the two representatives from Briggs Tech Holdings began handing out notebooks and training schedules, they realized the storm was very, very real. Nathan stepped into the center of the lobby, his voice low and resonant, yet sharp as a drawn blade. From today forward, Evergreen Motors won't just sell cars. We sell trust. We sell respect. He turned sharply to face Bryce, the salesman who had mocked Leo the loudest. You told Logan there was no commission in charity cases, didn't you? Bryce's face drained of all color. He stammered. I was just joking, sir. Nathan gave a cold, thin smile. Congratulations. From now on, you'll have the perfect opportunity to learn respect, starting from the car wash. A ripple of gasps ran through the room. Bryce gaped, too stunned to protest. Nathan then turned to the management team. Every single person here, from reception to the sales directors, will undergo mandatory training in service skills and bias awareness. He pulled from his suit pocket a small placard, already printed with the words, "Every customer has a story worth listening to." Nathan declared loudly, "This sign will hang right at the front desk. Anyone who doesn't have enough respect in their heart to work under this principle is free to leave." Right now, Mason, one of the senior salesmen, darted a glance at Connor. Both of them stood frozen, as if nailed to the floor. At the reception desk, Madison stared down at the floor, too ashamed to lift her head. Only Logan, the youngest employee, stood tall, a spark of determination lighting his eyes. Nathan gave a slight, approving nod when he caught the boy's gaze. Then Nathan turned back toward Leo Brooks, still quietly seated in the waiting area. "And the first thing I'll do, as the new owner," Nathan smiled, pulling out his phone, "is to make sure that a true hero leaves here with the best vehicle we have." Leo stood up awkwardly, raising his hand in a feeble protest. "I don't need anything fancy. Just a sturdy old pickup will do." Nathan burst out laughing, the sound rich and sincere. "Pick whichever one you like, Sergeant Brooks. Around here, gratitude isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in heart." Logan, clutching a stack of paperwork, quickly stepped forward. "I'll help you pick the best one, sir." Leo smiled warmly for the first time that day, a genuine light glimmering in his weathered eyes. Logan led Leo Brooks down the rows of gleaming vehicles, sunlight slanting through the windshields, scattering brilliant reflections across the lot. Leo walked slowly, every step deliberate, as if he wasn't used to being treated with such kindness. Nathan Briggs, hands tucked casually into his pockets, walked beside them, his expression resolute. When they stopped in front of a deep blue Chevrolet Silverado 1500, Leo shook his head, looking overwhelmed. "That must cost a fortune. I was just looking at that old Ford back there." Logan started to reply, but Nathan spoke first, his voice low and firm as iron. "No, Sergeant Brooks, this isn't about money. It's about respect. You once drove lives out of the line of death. Today, I'm just paying back a fraction of that debt." Leo stared at the truck, his eyes shimmering. He hadn't yet found words to respond when a furious shouting erupted from inside the showroom. "Is this some kind of joke? An old nobody get a free truck while I'm stuck washing cars and sitting through some stupid training?" The group turned back toward the noise. It was Bryce, the man who had mocked Leo, his face flushed beet red with rage. Nathan walked forward slowly, the entire room tightening like a drawn bowstring. He stopped just a few steps away from Bryce, his gaze razor sharp. "What's your name?" Bryce swallowed hard. "Bryce. Bryce Dalton. Nathan nodded. Add him to the termination list. Effective immediately. A brief, heavy silence fell before the new manager, sent by Briggs Tech, quietly nodded and made a note on his tablet. Bryce gaped, wanted to protest, but no one was paying attention anymore. He slinked away like a ghost, disappearing from the dealership without a single farewell. Nathan turned back to the remaining staff, his voice ringing out strong and unyielding. I will not tolerate anyone with that attitude, working under the Evergreen Motors name. He paused for a beat, letting his gaze sweep over each face. Every employee, sales, reception, service technicians will attend mandatory ethics and customer service training, starting tomorrow morning. No completion, no job. Logan gave a firm nod, while Madison, the receptionist who had tried to kick Leo out, hung her head low, her shoulders trembling slightly. A few employees murmured to each other, but no one dared to speak up. The air was thick, heavy with shame, but also thick with the scent of something new and clean, as if a storm had blown away the rot, clearing the path for a new beginning. When Leo climbed into the Silverado, Logan leaned in and asked gently, "Would you like to take it for a spin?" Leo chuckled, the first full, unguarded laugh of the day. "You drive, son. I like to sit back and enjoy feeling like a VIP for once." Logan started the engine, and the truck glided smoothly along the dealership's private drive, bathed in the warm, hopeful light of late afternoon. Within less than 24 hours, the events at Evergreen Motors exploded across social media. A picture, Leo Brooks with his silver hair, worn flannel shirt, and shy smile standing beside his brand new Silverado, captured by Logan, was posted online with a simple caption: "A hero who asked for nothing, and today, the world remembered him." The post spread like wildfire. Veterans groups, local community pages, even major automotive forums shared it relentlessly. By morning, the post had racked up over 2.3 million likes, 500,000 shares, and hundreds of thousands of comments, most of them filled with admiration, gratitude, and emotion. Major newspapers like USA Today, the New York Times, and Fox Business all ran stories, calling it a revolution of respect for the everyday person in the retail industry. One standout headline screamed, "From a silent waiting chair, a veteran changed an entire car dealership's culture of service." At Evergreen Motors the next day, the atmosphere was completely different. Customers flocked in, not just to buy cars, but to meet Leo. People lined up to shake his hand, offer heartfelt hugs, and whisper words of gratitude, not only for what he had done for the country, but for the lesson he had unknowingly taught them all. Even Madison, the receptionist who had once treated him with such disdain, stood frozen when a little boy, wearing a cap embroidered with Vietnam vet's grandson, shyly handed Leo a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You're my hero, sir, and my mom's too." Leo simply smiled, his eyes blurring under the gentle morning sunlight. In a quiet corner, Logan, the young salesman who had once dared to speak up, watched with silent pride. He knew he had made the right choice. A new plaque now hung under the Evergreen Motors sign outside the dealership, a small, polished brass line that read, "Where respect never goes out of style." The following morning, Leo Brooks drove his brand new Silverado back into the Evergreen Motors lot. The early sunlight glinted off a small American flag decal tucked neatly into the rear window, simple but unmistakably proud. As the automatic glass doors slid open, the entire showroom seemed to hold its breath for a beat. Every employee, from the technicians to the sales reps to the front desk, stood up in unison. A wave of applause rippled through the room, not loud and raucous, but steady, sincere, and full of meaning. Logan Reeves, the young employee, quickly stepped forward, holding out a steaming cup of coffee. "Welcome back, Mr. Brooks." Logan beamed. "Black coffee, 1 sugar. I asked around just to be sure." Leo chuckled softly, accepting the cup with hands still roughened by the passage of years. "You've got a good eye, kid," he said, his voice warmer than any thank you could express. Logan scratched his head bashfully. "It's the least we can do, sir." And not just Logan. But even the faces that had once brushed past Leo with indifference now bowed their heads slightly, no longer out of embarrassment, but from genuine, hard-earned respect. As he walked past the front desk, Madison, the young receptionist, now undergoing retraining in customer service, lifted her gaze, her lips pressing together as if to say something. But instead, she simply bowed her head deeply, a silent apology. Leo merely smiled, the same way he had lived his entire life, asking for nothing, holding no grudges, simply hoping the world would become a little better, bit by bit. In a quiet corner, Nathan Briggs, the former commanding officer, stood with arms folded, silently watching the scene unfold. A slow, proud smile spread across his weathered face, a face long familiar with the chaos of battle. He knew, true, lasting change always began with small moments like this. And today, at Evergreen Motors, respect was no longer just a promise. It had become part of the very air they breathed. 2 weeks after that historic day, Evergreen Motors officially entered a new chapter. The old dealership sign was taken down in a small but meaningful ceremony under the brilliant spring morning sun. Employees, loyal customers, and veterans from across the county gathered around, many wearing old, faded caps bearing the logos of military units. Some held small American flags with trembling hands, their eyes shimmering with emotion. Up on the scaffold, workers carefully installed the new sign, Brooks and Briggs Automotive, and just beneath it, a bold new slogan carved in clean letters, where every story is heard and every person respected. Leo Brooks stood beside Colonel Nathan Briggs, 2 men from different generations, bound by the same core values: loyalty, honor, and quiet kindness. Logan Reeves, now officially promoted to sales advisor, handed Leo a newly stitched company jacket bearing the new logo. Mr. Brooks, Logan grinned, his eyes sparkling with pride. "You'll always be a part of this place." Leo took the jacket, his hands trembling slightly with emotion. "I once dreamed of just owning a decent truck," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "I never imagined my name would be on the front of an entire dealership." Nathan Briggs placed a steady hand on Leo's shoulder, firm and reassuring, much like he had done decades ago on a battlefield. "You don't just deserve a truck, Leo," Nathan said, his voice rich with meaning. "You deserve the recognition this world should have given men like you a long time ago." Applause swelled like a rising tide as the tarp covering the new sign was pulled away. The atmosphere was filled not just with joy, but with something deeper, a collective atonement, a shared acknowledgement that people can change, that sometimes it only takes one brave moment of reflection to start. That day, Brooks and Briggs Automotive became more than just a car dealership. It became a living testament to a simple truth. A person's worth should never be measured by their appearance, but by the life stories they carry. And Leo Brooks, the man once overlooked like a shadow in the corner, now stood in the center of it all, a quiet light shining brightly, showing the world how it ought to treat one another, with gratitude, with respect, and with an open heart.